aware of the data that's available and the instruments that are being used. State testing was not done last year. In a meeting with superintendents 2 weeks ago, the state superintendent said we would move forward with state testing this spring. She went on to say that the testing would lack reliability and validity, but that we need to continue doing it anyway and use the data in a different way. I have no idea what that means. I have no idea why we would give a test when we know there's no validity or reliability. When they're talking about validity and reliability, reliability deals with the consistency of the test to measure what it's supposed to. Validity is more of an alignment issue, and does the test measure what it's supposed to. Reliability is if you use it multiple times, do you get the same accurate measures? Our state test has always been questionable as far as alignment, but that's not something that we can deal with here at the school, and it's a test given one time a year. The test was not given last year, but they do plan on giving it, or at least part of it, this spring. We don't know what that's going to look like, when it'll be, or if all students will be required to participate. There are several states that have already submitted for waivers with the administration change at the national level. We don't know if those waivers will be considered or not. They have already waived some of the national test requirements. There's a test called NAEP, which measures students at multiple grade levels. I think it's around 3% of the national population of students at grade levels, sort of a random test to give a picture of where everybody's at nationally. That test has already been called off for this year because of the pandemic and questions about validity and reliability. At the school level, there's two very important tests that we use a lot, or assessments. One is called the ELQA, and that's just pre-K and kindergarten. That's measuring standards. It also looks at preparedness for the next level, some of the social skills, and both math and reading skills at those two levels. That is a one-on-one type assessment that the teacher does with each individual child multiple times a year. As parents, you should be looking at that data, get familiar with that data, let Ms. Wilsey and Mrs. Bozeman know if you have any questions about it. The other test is a test that parents should be familiar with, the STAR test. The STAR test is given, I don't even know what normal is anymore, but it's usually given 3 to 4 times a year. This year so far it's been given twice. It was given once the first week students reported back in August, and given again in October. And we have data also that shows where students were on March 13th when school was let out or canceled because of the pandemic statewide. We have data that shows where the kids that were at Riverside at that time, where they were then compared where they are now, or in October and in August. The gaps aren't as big as what I thought they would be. You know, obviously there's going to be gaps when you take a 5-month summer break and when you have some of the stress along with the pandemic. The purpose of the STAR test is to provide information at the teacher-student level. The purpose is not for evaluation of faculty in any way, and it's really not supposed to be used or shouldn't be used to evaluate a school. It's there to look at students at their level, where they're at in reading and math, where they need to go, and gives the students and the teachers and the parents data for individual kids on how to gain improvements in both math and reading. All parents were provided the parent report for the STAR results at parent-teacher conferences. Parents can also request this data at any time and discuss it with their child's teacher. And they need to do that. They need to stay on top of this. But again, the test hasn't been given since October, so there's a little gap there. we won't give it again until we return to in-person instruction. And we'll talk about that more here in a little bit. The parents on the parent report, and there's a lot of additional data that we can provide to parents on individual kids. It provides a scaled score, which is sort of a score indicating how well the student did based on the difficulty level and the current or the correct responses on the test for that individual child. A percentile rank, which compares the kids to other kids nationally. If they get a 42nd percentile ranking, that means their skills are higher than 42% of the students nationally. So it's a way for parents to sort of compare to see where their kids at with other kids. And then grade equivalency is a number that suggests if the child's on grade level, below grade level, where they're at as far as year and month. The parents will see a score like 2.4, means they're in their second grade level, fourth month would be 2.4. And that's a number that the parents and the teacher discuss a lot because it's easy to understand, and we want them to be at grade level or above grade level. One important piece of data that we look at in STAR is to see how many students are at above the 40th percentile ranking, because that is a score that STAR or Renaissance, the people that make the STAR assessment, suggests will get the students where they need to be. When they're at the 40th percentile, there's a good chance they'll do well on the state test and be on grade level in math or reading. There are some differences, some gaps. I'm not going to go through individual classroom level data. I'm not going to go through student data. But school-wide, some gaps that exist on that assessment. In March of 2020, the week before we released, was pretty much the week that we did the last STAR assessment before the school year ended. We had 82% of our kids at the 40th percentile. That is 82%. In October, we were at 56% with the same grade levels, and that's all grade levels 2nd through 8th. So that's a 26% difference, but we're not till March yet. From October through like January, early February is when we get our largest gains in the school year. You've covered most of the review, you're into covering serious new content more, and that's where you see your more significant gains. So that's really not as big a gap as what you would think, the 26% change. In math is a 15% change. We went from 80% last March to 65% currently, and that's something that is very realistically overcome with just instruction of new skills. But that does not indicate where individual kids are. It does not indicate where individual grade levels are, and that's something that cannot be presented at the board meeting for various reasons. And we're a small school. We don't want to suggest anything that would get data drawn down to the student level. That's the privacy between the student, teacher, and parents. We have shown gains this year from August through October in grades 2nd through 8th. In reading, we've gained an average of 0.58, which is almost half of a grade level gain. For as hectic, bizarre, stressful, dysfunctional, whatever you want to call it, this school year has been, to have any gain is significant at this point. To have half a year gain right at the half a year point is pretty impressive. I'm proud of our teachers and our kids for that. In math, we're a little bit higher than that. We're at 0.82 for gains in math, which is just under a full school year, and that is the average. Again, you'll have some students that haven't made gains, some students that have made more significant gains to come out with that average. Any questions on that? I'll pause and breathe here for a second. Board members. Okay. Want to talk about distance learning a little bit, sort of where we're at and where we want to go, and where I would like to go is to not use it anymore.
Sorry, I have questions.
Oh, sorry. I'm muting.
My first question is over library books and the decision to not deliver library books to students or make sure those students have library books at home. I do feel like that has an aspect on academic process, on academic progress.
Okay, the library book issue was brought up. Last spring we lost, I think we ended up with just under 100 books that we lost when we left school abruptly last spring on Friday, March 13th. Part of that had to do with the way we left, but part of it had to do with we just didn't have the students here to hold them accountable to get those books back to us. I mean, that is the way a school library functions. We see those kids every day and can get the books back from them, remind them to bring them in, search their locker or whatever. Yes, they take them home, but we're on top of them that way. We provided 2 different resources for online books. We do value reading. We did not come up with a plan or even discuss a plan for opening the library for people traveling in and out or calling to get a book. It presents a lot of logistical problems. It presents a lot of problems with people in and out of the building, and just how to pull that off. It's something that was never even discussed with the faculty or the librarian.
Is it something we could discuss doing? Making sure kids have hard copies of books? Especially, well, I was even going through the financials and I noticed we even purchased a lot of books lately for the library too.
You know, we have purchased quite a few books in the library last year and this year, and we want to keep them available for kids. I mean, my biggest concern is the turnover in books, traffic in and out of the building, the logistics of doing it while the building is while we're on distance learning. I couldn't really commit to doing it at this time, no.
I'm sorry, you said you couldn't really commit to doing it at this time?
No, and I'm not really comfortable with doing it because I'm afraid we're going to lose too many books and the traffic in and out of the building.
Okay.
I don't even know logistically how that would work out.
Okay. Back to what you were talking about, the STAR testing. Why isn't first grade scores in the 2nd through 8th grade? You said 2nd through 8th. Why isn't first grade included in that?
The data that I was pulling from, there's a separate test for first grade and kindergarten, the early literacy. I believe they call it the early literacy. It's a different test that is different. So it's in a separate group of reports. So I couldn't include it. I would have to include it separately.
So first grade doesn't take the STAR test?
They do after so many weeks of school. They have tested this year, but I didn't look at that data in this.
Okay. I just feel like it would be a better description of how our school's doing if we were including all those grades that are taking that test. What you noticed that you said that in math there was a 15% change, which was a good thing. But what is the percent of kids at the 40th percentile in math in March, and then I'm sorry, or was it the two dates that you were giving? You said 82% of kids in the 40th percentile in reading, and then 56% of kids in October at the 40th percentile of reading. What were those statistics? What were those numbers for math?
I'm sorry, I left that off. It was 80 and 65 for math.
Okay. And why are we not doing the STAR assessment while doing virtual school? I know we had discussed it in the beginning. That was our plan for children that were virtual the entire time. They were going to be able to take the STAR assessments at home. So why is that no longer an option?
Okay, I wasn't aware that it was ever a part of a plan, but the reason, okay, I don't have a problem with doing AR testing at home when they read books, but the STAR testing needs to be done in a classroom environment to have good data. It has to do with the data and how usable that data is. If we have students all over the place taking it, we need to set that STAR test up in a classroom environment very similar to the way you would for the state test.
Okay. Well, even I would think maybe it'd even be interesting to look at the data if they were to take it at home, and then again whenever they come back at school to see that change in those two as well. But I think that was it on my questions for that portion.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, and I'm getting a bad echo. Are you getting the echo? Oh, I'm sorry. That fixed it. Okay, on distance learning. I would say the vast majority of parents filled out a survey for us. We tried this when we first went on distance learning during I believe it was during the alternative schedule week, and we had a problem with the Google and how to send the surveys out effectively and get the data back. And we had a few problems on this one, and but I think we got that straightened out. This survey is to help us improve. It's to give us some feedback from parents, what they're thinking, how the technology is using, the amount of instruction provided, things like that. Feedback was pretty positive. There were a handful of teachers that contacted some teachers on individual things where they may have marked something low to see specifically what they were talking about. I had asked Mr. Reed or the teachers to share data with Mr. Reed if there was technology concerns. And that's a big reason why we had parents put their name on the survey, so we could get back with them and get further clarification if there is a concern on one of the surveys. It's about making the distance learning the best that we can. On the instruction part of the survey and the technology questions, about 85 to 90% across the board were listed as 5s, a few 4s, and then you had some lower numbers scattered. Overall, pretty high ranking. So we had some training on some programs at the beginning of the year. We have a lot of teachers helping a lot of other teachers learn programs. A lot of these education programs that we're using in distance learning, the teachers master the programs by using them. You can go to training on a lot of these programs, come back, and you really don't know what you're doing until you use it more, just like any other software. But we continue to add other programs to pull in other content, more instruction, more innovation, things like that. But so far, the main programs we're using are Nearpod, Google Classroom, ebooks online, libraries, ExactPath, YouTube, GoMath, IXL. There's a variety of science sites being used out there by different teachers. And at the early grade levels, we are using some packets and printed materials for kids that need to be doing phonics, handwriting, things like that. State recommended times, in looking at what our teachers are doing by grade level, I believe we're either at or exceeding the state recommended times for grade level. Pre-K and K recommended times are 45 minutes. First through third is 70 minutes. Third through fifth, 80 minutes. Middle school is 120 minutes. And those are recommendations. There are also some national.
Mr. Garner, can you repeat that again? 45 minutes for pre-K through kindergarten?
Yes, 45 minutes for pre-K, 70 minutes for first through third, 80 minutes, or excuse me, first through second is 70 minutes. Third through fifth, 80 minutes. Middle school, 120 minutes.
And where are we at with all of that?
It's hard to tell just looking at plans that I've seen from teachers and talking to teachers and observing. I think we're probably exceeding most of those. And looking at the feedback on the surveys, most of the parents seem pretty satisfied with the amount of work that's being asked for.
That was going to be my next question. How do parents feel that the workload is for their particular student? Are you getting feedback on that?
Just the feedback from the surveys, and it was pretty positive.
They felt that the workload was appropriate?
Yes.
But those numbers, were they direct instruction? Is that what it was, direct teacher instruction?
No, I think this was, I would have to go to the state website and look at particulars. I got this from a table that compared multiple states, and the states were pretty similar. I think this is the time student sitting in front of the computer working. It's screen time more than anything. And
Do
that
you
could
have
probably
an amount for teacher instruction?
try that again, please.
Is there an amount that they are supposed to get of teacher instruction per day virtually?
They don't have it broken down by instruction or doing tasks.
I'm sorry, when you speak of they, the State Department?
State Department. And again, I got these numbers. They are on the State Department site, and I verified that, but I got it from a table that compares multiple states.
Could you send me a copy of that when you get a chance?
Sure. Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about the decision to close the school or go to distance learning, however you want to put it. The week of Friday, the November 13th, it was either Monday or Tuesday of that week, the health department called every district in Canadian County, the Canadian County Health Department called every district and informed us that the county would move to red on both maps and that we need to be prepared to implement strategies, whatever our policy went by, whatever our strategy is for that. You have to remember the health department will not make recommendations. The health department is there to give us data and support. They don't tell us what to do. In fact, they are provided strict, they have strict guidelines on absolutely not telling us what to do. It's like we're sort of on our own, deal with it. And that's for every school throughout the state. When the maps came out, one was red, one wasn't red. But my decision is not just based on maps. It's not just based on map color. It's not just based on data on the map. I'll give you an example of something that happened 2 weeks ago. If you went to find one map 2 weeks ago, the map didn't even exist because they didn't release it for that week. There's a lot of problems if we try to only look at one single aspect when we're considering how safe people are. The things listed in our policy are there to guide people, to inform people about things that could possibly happen that could result in the school being moved to distance learning. County spread, county-wide decisions, city decisions, all of that stuff is mentioned in policy, but at no time was there any intent to think that we had every single aspect of this pandemic listed in our policy and possible reasons for moving to distance learning. That decision is a very, very difficult decision, a very confusing decision, a very stressful decision. It's not an easy decision. And that decision is mine. And I'll tell you the biggest reason why it's mine is if something happens to a child in this building, if something happens to an adult in this building, if they become sick, become hospitalized, I don't even want to go worse than that, that's on me. It's not on board members, it's not on teachers, it's on me. I have to make the decision. And it's the same way with every superintendent in this state. It's the hardest decision we make in the pandemic. It's the hardest one we make in ice storms. If there's a fire, if there's flu, whatever it is, it's the most difficult decision we make. I've sat at the coffee table 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning with 2 or 3 superintendents in the county before, after driving roads and seeing how bad they are, and sit there and argue about it for an hour before we make the decision, because none of us like to close the school, regardless of what it's for. I think if you ask the teachers, they could see how stressed I was on Friday the 13th of November. Guys, it's something I take very seriously and I'll continue to take very seriously. Every superintendent in this state, none of us have ever been through a pandemic before. None of us have ever made these decisions before. We spent all summer discussing this. We spent all summer with the experts. We spent all summer looking at data, learning about the disease, learning about the pandemic, learning about options we had. To say this year has been stressful, the biggest understatement that would ever come out of my mouth. And it's not just for me, it's for everybody involved. Just a few factors considered in the decision. And if you look at the schools around us, and there's a lot of schools around us that are on distance learning, and many of the schools around us that aren't on distance learning have very small groups of students left in their schools because they either have so many students out on quarantine or their parents chose to leave them out. I mean, I've talked to teachers in large schools in the area and small schools. Most of the small ones are closed, but they say they'll walk down the hall, there might be 3 or 4 kids in a class because parents have chose to leave them at home or they're on quarantine. Not one time did Riverside School have to call a parent and say, your child can't come back because he was exposed to another child or teacher that tested positive and they can't come back to school the next 2 weeks. I never had to make that call. Reno schools has had to make over 1,000 of those calls. Mustang schools over 3,000 of those calls. And I know those are large districts, but the small districts around have had to make those calls. We haven't had to make any of them. And I'm very proud of that. And I put that on our parents. I put that on our kids. I put that on our teachers. Because it took all of them to accomplish that. Okay. The week Friday, November 13th, when I made the decision to close or go distance that following week, which is the week before Thanksgiving break. One, the stress level that week was through the roof. One, because of the call from the health department, and we knew it was getting worse. Okay, it went very quickly from people that may have heard about somebody that knew somebody that knew somebody that had the disease to everybody knew somebody with the disease. It changed that quickly. And that's going to cause stress. It did cause stress. But other than that, you know, the spread on the map was there. The map that continues to not be red, the entire state is the same color of orange. Even the health department will tell you it should be red. What's supposed to trigger that are things like hospitalization rates and everything. Those triggers should have already been there. There's a lot of people ignoring that map right now because, and I'm not saying I'm ignoring the map, but I've sort of lost respect for the reliability of the map because the triggers that are supposed to trigger different things to happen are not being used. I don't know whether that's politically motivated, whether people just don't understand it and aren't changing it. I don't know what it is, but it's not what it should be. The other one's just based on the number. Every week, if not multiple times a week, I look at the spread by zip code, by city. Yukon and part of our district zip codes are the highest in the entire state as far as spread right now. Yukon is the 4th highest city in the entire state. Canadian County is right up there in one of the worst counties in the state as far as spread. The spread in our county, and of course, the more populated areas, the more the spread, it's terrible. We have staff that live in those areas. We have students that travel to those areas on a regular basis. We have families that travel to those areas on a regular basis. I got 3 different pictures sent to me the week before Thanksgiving of our students in the roller skating rink at Yukon, packed with people, nobody wearing masks, no social distancing, sharing vapes in the bathroom. This is just what I'm hearing. I didn't get pictures of that, but you know, there were just a tremendous amount of things going on besides just the color of a map. The health department input, I talked to the health department probably 5 times that week, talking to the staff, seeing the staff. We have staff that are caring for elderly relatives in the home. We have staff that are elderly themselves. We have staff that are just worried about catching the disease. They're worried about their own children. They're worried about the children in their classroom. And we watch the news. We watch what other schools are putting up with, what other schools are dealing with. Kids are getting the disease. Most of the kids getting the disease don't have symptoms. That doesn't mean you can't catch it from them. We have a teacher that caught it from a student in another school. You know, we know those things can happen. That week, we got calls from 3 different parents whose families were going to get tested because they believe they had positive. One of the families ended up being positive. And we learned that another student was positive and never told anybody. But the parent was also positive. So there were a lot of things going on in the school that at that time, you can't go out and tell people about that stuff. It's hard for me right now to tell the story, and I lived through it. You know, I was there. You cannot put that in policy. You know, I've had teachers ask before, well, we need a rule book for the playground with all the rules in it. I said, so you want a rule book for the playground that describes everything that a kid could do wrong on the playground? Yeah, we need to be able to share that with the kids. Well, you can't you can't create such a document. It's impossible. As soon as you did, about 5 students had come out with something else to do wrong on the playground. I mean, one, this is a pandemic we've never been to before. We are never going to be able to list, even brainstorm a partial list of everything that could happen or every scenario that could happen to get the school to move to distance learning or alternative schedule or whatever. Okay, the things in the policy, minor guidelines, you know, I followed those policies up with letters to parents, trying to explain to parents, hey, this could happen on a moment's notice. We could be out for a week. No notice, phone call night before. Okay, that information has been shared with parents. I talked to parents about that at the beginning of the school. There's a lot of unknowns here, and there's going to continue to be. You know, today was a huge day with the vaccinations. Our first citizens in Oklahoma got vaccinated today. That's huge. That's what it's going to take to slow this thing down and put an end to it. But it's going to take time. This isn't something that's going to go away quickly at all. I'm constantly in discussions and looking at what other districts are doing. The superintendents in this area, especially the small school superintendents and the large school superintendents, we all talk to each other. We all look at what we're doing. We all look at decisions. We talk about those decisions together. But every school is different. We've addressed this situation different than any school around here, probably any school in the whole state. By not playing sports, by not doing archery, by not having academic meets, by not doing these things that bring people from the outside in the building and possible infections in the building. And that's all sacrifices that our kids have made. I mean, we have asked our kids to give that up, and they gave it up. But we also didn't have cases in the building because of it. I believe that's a big part of it. You know, that and, you know, the fogging, the sanitation, the things that the teachers are doing every day, the parents sending their kid with a mask, water bottles. I mean, all of that plays a part in this. But to say we only look at one thing to make a decision to go to distance learning or to close or to do whatever, it just can't be done. It can't be done. And that decision rests on me. It rests on every superintendent in this state. And it's not an easy decision. I struggled with the decision for the first week or two. And then I finally started looking at things around and talking to staff and them talking to me. They couldn't stand to be around me. I was pretty stressed. But then I realized we did make the right decision. Do I think it's hurting our kids academically? Absolutely it is. Do I care about that? Absolutely I do. I wouldn't be in this business if I didn't care about those things. I care about every one of our kids. Each and every day I think about those kids. The first day we were on distance learning, I had a teacher in my office in tears because a kid was worried about being abused. I mean, I wanted to reverse the decision right there that minute, but I couldn't, and I shouldn't have. You got to look at the whole picture. You got to look at the stress at many, many different levels. At no time, when you have a school full of teachers and support staff, at no time, I don't care whether you're in a business, a school setting, whatever it is, at no time should your employees be as stressed as the ones in this school were the week of the 13th. They were worried about the kids, they were worried about themselves, they were worried about their families, and that's wrong. No job should put that stress on people. With the exception, sorry, Miss Caldwell, she's probably in that job. You know, our nurses, our healthcare workers right now, you know, I hate to put it like this, but it's true. I mean, they did sign up for that. This is not what schools are built for. Schools aren't built for pandemics. I mean, I see a lung doctor. My lung doctor said, "Oh, y'all are the heroes. Hospitals were built for this. We train for this. We went to college for this. We prepare for this every single day." I didn't prepare for this. I got a crash course over the summer that made my head spin 1,000 different directions, but no, there wasn't a chapter in the book in college that went through a pandemic. Are we going to make bad decisions? Yeah, we probably are. Are we going to make good ones? I think we've made a lot of good decisions. We did not have an active case in this building. No other school around here can say that. We have probably had more hours of instruction time than I challenge you to find in other school. What you don't realize, a lot of the other schools, even when they're open, they have so many kids out on quarantine, so many kids out from choosing 3 different options on how they're going to attend school. I mean, their population was down, and we can say that some too. Another thing that was happening the week of the 13th, the number of kids sent to school with symptoms was going through the roof. We were sending kids home in carloads, and some of it was the same ones every day coming back with symptoms. You know, our attendance was horrible that week. There were a lot of different factors that played into the decision and that played in to getting people as stressed out as what they were. And the kids could see it too. The kids feed off of that energy. It's a very negative energy. Of course they're going to feed off of it. But if something happens to one adult or one child, that's on one person, and that's me. Or Craig McVeigh in El Reno, or Mike over at Banner, or Mr. Derryberry. I mean, whoever, that has always been on the superintendent and always will be on the superintendent. That's why the law says the superintendent shall have the sole authority to close the school in case of emergencies. It's in our policy like that. It always has been. But even that, when that law was written, they weren't thinking about a pandemic. They were thinking about ice storms and bad roads, no electricity. We don't have policies and laws for pandemics. Yes, we added some guidelines and some policies this summer, in this fall. But it has always been the superintendent's responsibility to make those decisions. As far as I'm concerned, it always will be. I mean, it has to be. The superintendent is here every single day. We see the things that we need to see to base the decision on. Nobody else does. And they're very important decisions when it comes to keeping people safe. And that's what all this is about, is keeping people safe. There's always an inherent responsibility in any school, whether you're thinking about, you know, guys with guns coming in shooting kids or whatever. There's always been this inherent responsibility and very serious responsibility to keep kids and teachers and staff safe. But a pandemic's different. One, it's invisible, and the other, there's so many unknowns. We don't understand this disease. Every article, every book you read about it says something different. Every person that gets it at a different level. We have people dying. We have people that might be sick a day. We have thousands that have no symptoms, don't even know they have it. Me, that's the scariest part about it, is you don't know what it's going to do to you. And that's whether it's an old person, young person, child, adult, whatever. You don't know what this disease is going to do to you. And I'm not going to have a little experiment with 150 kids and 28 staff to figure it out. I'm going to keep people safe. I promise the staff that. I promise the kids that. During the veterans program, I talked to the kids before the program and I announced that I still believe we're the only school in the county that didn't have an active case in it. And the kids applauded. It shocks me to this day. It surprises me that they applauded that. That just shows they're proud of it. They're proud that they wore masks every day and it's paying off. And drinking out of water bottles and giving up these things that they love to do, like basketball, like archery. They're the ones that are sacrificing for this. And now for a temporary period of time, somewhat they're sacrificing their education. I believe what we're doing now in distance learning is much, much better than what we did in the spring. Because we had no planning time in the spring and the packets. It was just wasn't good. We're better than that, but you're never going to make it as good as the classroom is. And that's why we need to get back in the classroom. But we also have to be safe. The safety has to be the priority. I've got, I was on an hour-long phone call with a parent tonight, very cordial, very professional, but was not happy about the situation. There's not a parent in the state anywhere that's happy right now. It's either why in the world is the school still open or why in the world is the school closed. You hear both sides. There are parents out there complaining because their child's still in a school. There are parents complaining that the children aren't in a school. There's no right or wrong answer here. There's just, you have to look at everything going on in that specific school and determine whether it's safe or not and make a decision. It's a hard decision. It's my decision, and I'm going to take it very, very seriously. And it's something that we have to look at over break. I will be emailing, talking to whatever the 3 board members. I'll be talking to staff. I'll be looking at data. I'll be talking to other superintendents. I'll be talking to the health department over Christmas break to see where this thing's going. If you talk to the health department now, it's doom and gloom. It doesn't look like it's going to get any better anytime soon. I hope they're wrong. I hope they're very wrong. I hope we start going down real quick. But got 2 weeks to look at things and see where it goes from there and make a decision. Let me see from my notes. Just a few other things that are going on. I say we haven't had active cases. We didn't have any active cases until the kids weren't here. And then we have had 3 faculty in isolation. Isolation means it was a positive case. We have 2 other staff with multiple COVID symptoms and have been asked to test multiple times. We have 6 faculty in quarantine. I'm being one of those. That's why I can't sit by you. About noon tomorrow that ends, and that's a good thing. It's driving me nuts. We have positive cases. The last I heard about 4 families. I know we have 2 families where pretty much the whole family is infected, and parents sick. One parent was in the hospital, I believe, may have got out of the hospital. Canadian County's 4th worst spread in the state. Yukon zip code 73099, which does come into the east part of Riverside District, is the worst zip code in the state for spread. And the city of Yukon is the 6th worst spread in the state. In the data on that website, and that is a website that is endorsed by the state health department because they provide the data for it, I could not locate when I looked at it yesterday in writing these notes, I could not locate the zip code for El Reno. I don't know why, but somewhere in all the data, and it's a very large site, every zip code is there, but the main screens just show sort of the top 10 or 20 zip codes, not every zip code. Any questions? And I'm going to mute for a little bit.
Yes, I have questions. How many teachers currently right now have COVID?
That should be an easy question to answer, but it's not. Two possibly. I'll leave it at that.
So none confirmed COVID cases in teachers and staff right now.
Well, again, we have 2 staff with multiple symptoms have been asked to test multiple times.
I know, that's not what
I know that's not what you asked. Let me finish my sentence.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, I guess you could say we still have 2 staff that are currently infected.
We have 2 staff right now that are confirmed cases of COVID. How many are quarantined? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back. Those 2 staff members, are they staff or are they teachers? Are they faculty? Are they teachers, or are they?
One of each.
Support staff. Sorry, thank you. I'm sorry.
One of each.
How many teachers do we currently have in quarantine?
Two.
Two teachers currently in quarantine. Was that a health department issue quarantine?
The health department at this time are not setting quarantines and are not doing tracing for adult cases, only child cases.
So this is a self-quarantine?
Yes. We sort of have to do our own investigation.
Okay. My question is, I'm sorry.
They provide guidelines, but we determine who's where. And
I'm sorry, who's we?
Me and the staff that are involved.
What is it going to take for us, for the students to be able to go back to school? Is there a number in your head? Is there a color on a map? What is it going to take?
Obviously, the spread in the area needs to get better, needs to decrease. I don't know that I can say a magic number. Positive feedback from the health department, sort of judging where the staff's at. I won't be able to see the kids before then. You know, just overall picture. I wish I could say this, and this, but it's hard to do. But I think the data and the trend and the spread over Christmas break, sort of seeing where it's at after Christmas and the week after that, it takes a little bit for it to catch up. I'm concerned about gatherings over Christmas, concerned about New Year's parties. And that's what the health department is telling us too, is those things could make the spread sort of go crazy. It's expected to go up a lot over the next 3 to 6 weeks. is what they're telling us.
I think that we have to look at the number of patients in the ICU in the hospital, the number of positive cases that we're seeing. Like it's a big picture. I mean, if you look at the White House report that came out not too long ago, our state is red. Whether our governor wants to call it red or not, our state isn't in red. We're in a critical situation here. So we can't just say if the numbers reach down to 50 cases per 100,000, then we can resume in classroom education. We've got to look at the number of cases in the hospital, in the ICU. It's a big picture.
The map the COVID alert map that we follow, is that part of the trigger? Hospital beds, it will turn red.
It will turn red, and in all data, it should be red, but I think that the governor has to trigger it to turn red, and I don't think that he will. Because again, the White House report says we are in red. Our map is entirely red.
But just to confirm, the map that we talked about following with this policy is the COVID alert map, to which we have never been red.
Correct. None of the entire state's been red.
Okay, I want to talk about the hospitalization for a little bit, and that's another thing. The hospitalization rates first started getting ridiculous high that week before Thanksgiving. What that has to do with us is when people are in schools or in gatherings, you can't have school without having a gathering. You're in a gathering every time you're in a classroom with adults, with kids. Adults can catch this from kids. Most kids are asymptomatic. You don't even know they have it. I mean, we have a teacher we hired from another district that caught it from a second grade kid. It can happen, and it has happened many, many times in schools around us, because I've heard it from superintendents. But what's more concerning is either those kids or the adults in the school taking it home to their grandparents, taking it home to higher risk populations. Those are the people that are taking it to the hospital. And it's not necessarily all just older people. It's people with any existing conditions that this thing may attack. And some people ended up in the hospital and don't have any existing conditions. So it's such an unpredictable disease, okay? But hospital administrator after administrator has got on camera to say publicly, the concern about the hospitals in the Oklahoma City area, those hospitals serve Canadian County. They serve all of the counties around the Oklahoma City metro. We don't have hospitals in Canadian County that treat COVID patients. They have to be transferred to Baptist or Mercy or OU or St. Anthony. Those hospitals are filling up so fast because of the populations outside of the Oklahoma City area sending them patients. And partially too, because none of those cities and areas outside the Oklahoma City areas are doing many things to stop the spread or slow the spread. They don't have mask policies. They don't do some of the things to mitigate this thing and get it under control. We know those things could get it under control. Unfortunately, we're not committed to doing it. I'm not saying we as the five of us, we as society, I guess. Some people just aren't willing to give up conveniences that could hopefully reduce the numbers in our hospitals. Hospitals by design are built and designed based on populations and stuff to serve at about 85 to 90% capacity without a pandemic. They're designed to be 85, 90% full all the time, okay, based on the predicted number of sick people in that area and a lot of statistics when they build the hospital. They don't want to build a hospital with a bunch of empty beds. They want to build a hospital with beds. That's how they make money. That leaves you with around 15% of your space in the hospital for COVID patients, and we're knocking on about 30% of patients in our local hospitals that are COVID patients now. So you have hospitals over 100% capacity. And that's very dangerous. It's not only very dangerous for the treatment of the COVID patients, it's dangerous if you get in a car wreck, have to have another surgery, you know, all the other patients, cancer patients. It presents a lot of challenges, and it's something that we have to get under control, or we're going to lose a lot of lives for this deal. We don't want people dying because as a society, we're not doing what we can do to stop it. And we're just not, unfortunately. Any other questions?
When was the last COVID committee meeting?
There was one scheduled the week of the ice storm. It is obviously canceled because of the ice storm.
But that one wasn't rescheduled or anything. When was the last COVID committee meeting?
I would have to look up the date.
October?
Yeah, probably.
October, okay. Are there any plans on talking with the COVID committee or again about these decisions of going virtual?
As far as assisting in making the decision, no.
I'm sorry, no?
As far as asking them assistance in making the decision, I would say no. They're not here. It's hard to even explain what the school environment became during all of this. You have to be here and see those things and be in constant communication with the health department, other districts, and see the whole picture. That's not an outside committee thing.
I'm pretty sure I see a pretty good picture of what's going on. I think I'm done with questions for this one. I'll continue whenever we go to agenda point 6 at that point. If there's any more questions from anyone else.
I don't know that resuming the COVID committee will do any good, but that's just my opinion. I don't think it's going to solve the problem. I think the decision's made and we have to do, I just think resuming the COVID committee is going to do anything because I brought a recommendation to the board last time and it was declined.
And I will just bring that up again at agenda point 6, but maybe we could have them come together and bring something else up that we would, a policy that would be followed.
Are you finished with your report?
I'm finished. Thank you.
Financial report as prepared by the encumbrance clerk. Approval of monthly financial report of the activity fund as prepared by the activity fund custodian.
Okay, I'm not hearing anything.
And approve the monthly purchase order on general, building, and child nutrition. You're muted. You're muted. Oh, sorry about that. Consent agenda. All of the following items will be approved by one vote unless a board member desires to have a separate vote on a specific item. The consent agenda consists of the discussion, consideration, and approval, disapproval of the following 2021 items. Minutes of the special board meeting of November the 9th, 2020. Financial report is prepared by the encumbrance clerk. Approval of monthly financial report of the activity fund as prepared by the activity fund custodian. And approve the monthly purchase orders on general, building, and child nutrition funds as listed on the warrant pending summary report.
I have a few questions on there if I could ask them. My first one was, and I did message Ms. Kraft a few of them, but I wanted to could I request to see the number 285 on the general funds, the $7,116.91. Could I see a copy of that that purchase order when you get a chance, Ms. Kraft?
Just a copy of the purchase order, or
what are details? What it was spent on?
okay, yes.
And then my second question was on the building fund. There, the Two Trees Technologies. What for 3,485? What was that purchase technology wise for?
I forgot to grab those invoices during the front office, but you could ask Mr. Reed. He'd be able to tell you.
I also noticed on that the mower, that payment also went through. Do we have the mower at hand now?
Yes.
At Riverside in the shed?
Mhm.
Awesome. And what is the latest on, I noticed the plumbing, although we had passed up purchase, we had passed for Donco sewer and drain, then I noticed it was just 1,000. I'm assuming because they found more work that needs to be done. Could you give us an update on the plumbing?
Yeah, we had a second plumber come out and look at it, and it's actually the plumber that redid most of the plumbing in the entire building about 4 or 5 years ago. Came out and looked at it. He gave us the same recommendation that Donco did, in that we just need to try a different type of paper. We have video or watched video of how the paper was accumulating on the rough edges of the pipe. We haven't had any problems since we've started trying the new paper. It's called RV paper, and it disintegrates very quickly and dissolves very quickly, so it doesn't get hung up. And so far, that's working. Because if they have to replace the pipe, they have to tear up a significant portion of the building's foundation. And I'm very, very uncomfortable doing that. The plumbers are very, very uncomfortable doing that.
We haven't had the kids here to test it out though yet, have we?
I
don't believe the kids have.
No, it's mainly been faculty use.
But we're just hoping that it doesn't need a big purchase or a big fix. It's just the toilet paper at this point.
That's what we're hoping. The new quote that we got on that was around $30,000, and it would require quite a bit of foundation to be busted up. There's cracks in that, south wall of that building. We come into this building on a regular basis and have doors that we can't get open because the building's settling so much. Probably has something to do with the oil rigs that surrounded the school at one time and the fracking, but it's not a real stable building, and you get it tearing up that much of the foundation. I'm hoping the different type of paper will help. So far, so good. The project out by kindergarten to do the drainage by kindergarten has been completed, and the flooring in those bathrooms has been completed. If they do have to tear into any of the foundation, we do have extra tile on hand that they provided during that job. And the new tile looks great, much better.
Okay, that was all my questions.
Thank you. I move to approve the consent agenda items as listed.
How do you vote, Ms. Warden?
The Kraft has to do that. Sorry, it's okay. Go ahead, Melissa.
How do you vote, Ms. Warden?
How do you vote, Ms. Warden?
Yes.
How do you vote, Ms. Caldwell?
Yes.
How do you vote, Ms. Baker?
Yes.
All right, discuss and vote to approve, disapprove dates for the 2021 School Board of Education meeting as required to be submitted by the county clerk on December the 15th, 2020. I don't have any issues with any of these dates.
I didn't.
Okay.
My only question was, we had to reschedule on Columbus Day this year. The reasoning was because it was on Columbus Day. And then I noticed that October 11th is also on Columbus Day for this next year. Is that an issue?
We, I mean, it's our choice whether we have it on Columbus Day or not. I mean, it's not illegal or anything. I don't remember why we changed it this year, conflict or something. But we can have it on Columbus.
We do have school that day, correct?
Yes.
I don't see any reason to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
No, I had just asked about the switch last time, and I was told it was because it's Columbus Day, because it was different from the list that was passed at the original board meeting. Okay, I'm fine with all the dates as well.
I move to approve the dates for 2021 Board of Education meetings as required to be submitted to the county clerk on December 15th, 2020.
I'll second that.
How do you vote, Ms. Warden? How do you vote, Ms. Warden? How do you vote, Ms. Caldwell? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. How do you vote, Ms. Warden?
Yes.
How do you vote, Ms. Caldwell?
Yes.
How do you vote, Ms. Baker?
Yes.
You want to send this? Amber? All right, discuss and vote to approve, disapprove annual stipends of $2,000 to each employee except those who have been hired within the past month. You sign this. So how many staff do we have currently? Did you say 28 earlier?
28,
Okay.
which after estimated tax benefits that the district has to pay, which is about 17%, it put us right at 65,000 for the bonuses.
Okay.
Total.
I don't have any questions.
I just have just a couple. Because this is a really big bonus, and you stated that the other schools do this bonus as well around us.
Now, some of them do. This is something that we've done here for, I guess, 5 years now. This is the same bonus that we gave last year at this time.
Normally it's $2,000 per employee
Yes.
per year. Okay.
Some years it's been less. Last year was the first year for this amount, and I just went with what we did last year.
Yeah, that's a really big, nice amount. What is our salary ladder compared to the state minimum? You know,
Most of our teachers are on the state schedule.
So is it we're matching the state minimum? Do we pay more than the state minimum, or are we right at the state minimum?
We follow the state schedule.
Okay, so the state
Teacher
minimum.
on that step gets that step. Yes.
Okay. So my only idea whenever I was thinking about this, and not for this year, I think it's too late for that, but for next year, maybe we could consider maybe doing a smaller Christmas bonus and instead raising our step salary a little bit, and our hourly wage a little bit. And I think the reason why that would be beneficial for us, a little bit more beneficial than the lump sum at Christmas, is because then maybe whenever people go to apply, we might get more applicants. We might get a little bit different of a range of people coming and applying for the position. So that was just what my thought was. Maybe next year we could think about maybe doing it monthly or something and adding it too, so that we pay more than the minimum. Makes us
A couple of years ago. The problem is then if you start getting into financial trouble, you can't take it back from them. So a bonus is never guaranteed. It's only if you have an excess amount. So if you automatically, like Mrs. School around us, I'm not going to name names, did that, they automatically bumped everybody up. But then when they get to financial problems, they can't take that raise from them. They can't take that amount of money back from them. So it's guaranteed every single year. Whereas a bonus is not.
I can absolutely understand that. I think, I mean, we're not talking about a crazy amount. We'd be talking about, what, $100 more a month, you know, on a paycheck. So that was just my thought, that maybe we could look more into that next year and see how, maybe we could look and see how our pay is compared to the other schools around us as well. Because people do have to travel. A lot of teachers have to travel and staff have to travel. Maybe if we pay them a little extra, that would help with the gas and entice people to come a little further out.
And I know we looked at the salaries probably 2 years ago compared to other school districts around us, and we are very comparable. So to be able to offer a bonus, I think is a nice incentive to have keep them here. I don't want to call it a retention bonus, but you know, the staff enjoy it. They want to stay here because other districts may not get that.
Yeah, I absolutely understand. I wish we could, whenever people apply, we could say, hey, come here, we have a $2,000 Christmas bonus, you know, because then more people might come apply that way too.
Mr. Reed.
I guarantee that in case something happens and you can't get that. So.
Mr. Reed, we're hardly able to hear what Ms. Caldwell's saying when she talks.
All right, I don't have any other questions.
I don't either. How about you, Ms. Baker?
No, that was it.
I move to approve the email stipends of $2,000 to each employee except those who have been hired within the past month.
How do you vote, Ms. Warden?
Yes.
How do you vote, Ms. Caldwell?
Yes.
How do you vote, Ms. Baker?
Yes.
All right, discussion. Vote to approve or disapprove the hiring of Lisa Everhart as child support employee, child nutrition assistant at $10 per hour with health, retirement, and sick personal leave benefits. So is Miss Sherry leaving, or is this Miss Witkowski? Or is she just coming to help?
It's to replace Ms. Witkowski.
Okay.
Interviewed.
I did have a question, and my question was, I noticed that this was $10 per hour. However, we had just hired someone for $13 an hour, an employee, not a teacher, but a support staff. What is the difference in why we're doing $10 versus $13?
Probably more to do with the type of work that we do.
Okay. How many hours is this position?
Probably about 6 hours a day, 6.
Just in my opinion, I just feel like we could do better. That was just my only concern.
If I remember correctly, the last time we hired for this position, it was $10 an hour with the same benefits.
Okay.
When I interviewed this person, and this person used to work with Sherry at another job, so they knew each other, and Sherry highly recommended her, and she had good references too. Had some good applicants for the position. It wasn't an easy decision, but she was making more than that current position at a fast food restaurant that she had been at for quite a while, but she doesn't get insurance, she doesn't get retirement. The hours and the benefits are very appealing to most support staff. They want to be on the hours and the schedule that their kids are on. In this case, it's grandkids, but am I thinking of the right person? Kids. You know, those things besides the hourly rate are very beneficial to them and very appealing to them. It's not just the hourly rate.
So do we pay our custodial a little bit differently than our cafeteria, then a little bit differently than our aides?
Yes. Because remember, we have, like both of our custodial are also certified bus drivers. So you have to be competitive with what's around us there. This is probably ballpark for what other districts pay cafeteria staff.
Okay. No, I was just questioning it because I just remember the $13 an hour a couple months ago. I think that's all.
Did you say that's all?
That's all.
I move to approve the hiring of Lisa Everhart as support employee child nutrition assistant at $10 per hour with health, retirement, and sick personal leave benefits.
How do you vote, Ms. Warden? Yes. How do you vote, Ms. Caldwell?
Yes.
How do you vote, Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Reed, if there's anything you can do with Ms. Caldwell and Ms. Warden on their sound, it would be very helpful. Ms. Baker's coming through loud and clear. Those two are very weak.
We're doing what we can. It's echoing. If we get very much louder, maybe they could speak up. They're wearing a mask after all. Sorry, ladies.
Discuss and vote to approve the following revisions to the district's COVID policy as recommended by legal counsel to provide further clarification. The superintendent, as chief executive officer of the school district, has the power to change learning to virtual from in-person or any combination thereof as required by the COVID pandemic.
What I did, I sent our legal counsel because there was other legal counsel that got involved in this. I sent our legal counsel all of our policies and asked for a recommendation to clarify within those policies what my role is. And although it's already clarified in policy early as far as superintendent responsibilities and what the law says, she felt this would help to provide further clarification. That clarification exists regardless, but if we wanted to further clarify it within our policy, this is a statement that she would recommend.
Yes, I do. Two COVID virtual learning policies were brought before the school board, a long-term closure and an alternative one. We discussed the pros and cons of both policies, voting against a long-term closure and for an alternative schedule. I have copies of our current COVID policy if anyone needs them to refer to as I say the following. This provision, like Mr. Garner just stated, is not necessary. It's not necessary. It's just for for clarification purposes. Even if we add this to our policy, we are still not following policy by not following our alternative plan. The policy is still not being followed. We didn't have a single active case before we went all virtual. Parents had the option also of choosing virtual or in person for their child. Since November 16th, 2020, Riverside has not been following board policy. We have never been right under the COVID map. We are not following the OSSBA map, and that was determined by staff in the COVID committee, if I'm correct. Right. Mr. Garner, could you, how we determined to use the COVID alert map was by staff at a staff meeting and then also by the COVID committee? That's who chose what map we follow to be included in the policy?
The alternative schedule, that whole thing was staff, not the committee.
Okay. So the COVID alert map, not the OSSBA map, was what was determined. That's what we included in our policy, the COVID alert map. Yes, the map on OSSBA website that they update weekly is what I'm talking about. The one that shows we're red right now, that I think it's bringing some confusion. I'm just trying to clarify just a little bit. The COVID alert map that's listed in our policy, the health department map has always been orange, never red. Monday, November 16th was Riverside's first day of Monday through Friday distant learning. I requested a special board meeting on Tuesday, November 17th, to discuss and possibly modify our COVID policy. As soon as board policy wasn't being followed, I requested a special meeting. That was my first attempt to enforce policy. My request for a special meeting was denied by both board members. The denial of the special meeting request shows the support of the policy not being followed. We have gone through 28 days of our policy not being followed. It is our job as board members to set and to enforce policy. I went back looking through my stuff, trying to educate myself, trying to figure out what my role is as a board member, what authority do I have. I went back and I pulled out that packet that OSSBA gave us. And I have extra copies of all these that I'm talking about in case you guys needed to look at them. But this packet says the role of the school board OSSBA gave us: sets policy and holds superintendent accountable for implementation. Was on that one. Then I went to our policies online. Policy BFA. Policy BFA, which is on our school website. BFA is called Board Policies. And I would just like to read part of this. The Riverside Board of Education believes that the formulation of school policy is its primary function and responsibility. School policies are statements that set forth the goals of the community and the Board of Education. School policies serve as guidelines for the successful and efficient functioning of the school system. They create a framework within which the administrative staff can successfully discharge its responsibilities in organizing and carrying out a sound educational program. This is the most important part, though. Policies may be cooperatively formulated by the Board of Education working with students, teachers, and parents, but the final authority rests solely with the board. The implementation of school policy is the responsibility of the superintendent and the administrative staff. Okay, so that was that policy. Then I you know me, I love research. So then when I looked at more policy BAA, and that is the one that lists our jobs as board members. Board of Education powers and duties. So there's a whole bunch listed, and I wrote down the ones that are really important, and I have extra copies if you guys need them. But BAA, if you're writing this down, the ones that are really important are number 2, 3, and 7. However, the most important one, if you go to page 3 on this policy, in between number 29 and number 1, there's one sentence. And I highlighted one sentence, and this is the most important of all. The superintendent of schools is the executive officer of the board and shall carry out all policies adopted by the board. Not only is it our job as the school board to create and enforce policy, it is the superintendent's job to follow policy. Not enforcing policy leaves the school board legally liable if a lawsuit were to occur. If a parent files a lawsuit over us not following policy, board members are liable. And that was explained to me by OSSBA when I called.
I printed out a policy too. I printed out the Board of Education Executive Officer Superintendent policies. And number 2, the last sentence says the board shall seek the superintendent's recommendation on school matters. And I feel like his recommendation, since he is in the school and knows everything that's going on with every teacher, staff member, student, he's going to have better information than what we have outside of the school. Also, number 17, which he made comment of, is the superintendent shall have the authority to close any of the public school in case of an emergency. And if people are out there dying by the thousands, I feel like that's an emergency.
The difference is we're not closing. The difference is we're not closing. We're still counting our hours and we're virtual. And that's a big difference. We're not closing. We're still virtual and we're still turning these hours in every day to the State Department. Okay, I also have some more, and I'll continue on here. So not enforcing policy leaves us liable if a lawsuit were to occur. If a parent files a lawsuit over us not following policy, board members are liable. Things that need to be taken into consideration this evening. Under our current COVID policy, IEP students would be receiving extra one-on-one on Thursdays and Fridays. Gifted students would have class because from my understanding, we're not having gifted class right now, virtually, right?
That's correct.
That is correct. Okay. So we're not having gifted class either with virtual. So my question is, or my concern is the liability of this all. I'm having a hard time justifying that we're not following and enforcing policy is due to teacher safety. And we need to look at this more seriously. We have children and faculty not wearing masks in the building and Facebook pictures posted without masks on. We have hotspots offered to daycares. There are more confirmed in Riverside cases than when we had students in the building, which to me is just mind-boggling because we had none when we had all these kiddos in here, and now it's going around like crazy. So my due to liability, I would like to go on record today again. I am attempting to enforce policy. There are 3 ways that I looked at it that we can resolve this. And the first one would be that the superintendent follows policy. But we're already on day 28 of not following policy. It's been 28 days. I think I mentioned that. 28 days not following policy. So the first thing would be that we start following policy. The second thing is that we would modify our current policy so that it's followed. And I have some suggestions, just things, because I was like, well, I don't want to say that, and then be like, well, what do you recommend? I do have some things if you guys wanted to hear them. But the third thing, so we have the superintendent follows the policy, or you can modify the policy so that's being followed. Or the third option would be we need to enforce the policy being followed as a board.
We need to amend the policy to the statement on the agenda.
But that still wouldn't be following the plan and the policy. If he were to close, like he said, it doesn't even matter if he has it or not, but it's still not following policy. It's still not following our policy that we have in place where IEP kids go on Thursday and Friday, while all the kids attend Monday through Wednesday. That is the policy that we placed. So board member, and I'm almost done. Board members, I am so enforcing the policy, and that would, if you were to ask me, well, how do we enforce the policy? I would say, well, Mrs. Caldwell is the president. I would ask you, what do you recommend us to do to make sure that this policy is being enforced? Because that's our job, is to enforce policy. So your recommendations of what we should do to enforce this policy. But board members, I am urging you to vote no on this provision, because this provision is not necessary and it undermines our authority as a board. At what point do we consider these 28 days of defying policy and abuse of power? Even if this provision is passed, the current COVID policy passed at the October board meeting, it still stands. We should currently be on an alternative schedule with all students attending Monday through Wednesday and our IEP students coming to school in person Thursday and Friday to receive their extra one-on-one. Canadian County has never been in the red under the COVID alert map. We went from yellow to orange on October 19th. We've remained in orange ever since, with the map updated every Friday. And they have the trigger, the red on there, that they'll do it at red, and we've never been the red on there. So again, I would like to ask the board president for her suggestions on how to enforce policy, or we can look into modifying the policy, but it's so important that we follow our policies. And I would also like to add to this COVID policy we're discussing adding this one statement. I would like to make a request to amend it to add another statement. And I would like to include that under red in our virtual plan, which the State Department recommends as well, that we have up to 15%, 13 to 15% of our student population, that amount of kids with IEPs will get to attend. Even if we're red, they will get to attend Monday through Friday. I think that is important to make sure those children with special needs get those services. And that is also recommended by the State Department of Education. So I'm going to make the recommendation that we add to this policy, that we include IEP students to attend Monday through Friday when we are on red on the COVID alert map, not to exceed 15%. I put 13 to 15%. That way we can make sure that we have that number in there. I would also like to recommend that, or propose, I've only been on the board for a few months, so I'm not sure how this all works, but I'd like to also propose that we add another statement to our policy, to which we include like schedule times by grade level. We can show, that way we can show the hours of instruction, more of a schedule. And I brought an example of Minko Public Schools. They have that written out as well in their COVID plan.
So you're proposing that?
I'm proposing that we enforce policy first and foremost, or we modify it to where it is being followed. But no matter what, my point that I'm bringing to the board tonight is that policy needs to be followed. And adding this statement isn't going to matter, because if he closes it, it's still not following what we're supposed to do if it's orange.
I think we need to amend that policy, but what I'm asking is, you're proposing that we resume in-school teaching, instruction.
I'm proposing that we follow the policy to where we are on our alternative schedule at this point in time. I would also like to add to the policy that when we are on red under the COVID alert map, we include IEP students not to exceed 15% of our student population. I would also like to discuss adding in to our COVID plan just a schedule so parents could see at what time, what hours, and how much instruction is going on for those school hours. I'm done.
Yeah, I don't even know what to do with that.
Okay, I can't make a second motion, but a couple things.
I didn't hear what you said.
Mrs. Baker has spent a lot of time talking to attorneys this week. Therefore, I've spent a lot of time talking to attorneys the last 2 weeks. We both received advice. I'm pretty confident, I'm very confident that we are following law, which overrules policy. And that was clarified in the November meeting, or November, October, whenever it was, when we did the alternative schedule policy. There was a statement on there that referred to the law and the authority of the superintendent to close the school when necessary. We are never going to have a policy that includes everything that could happen in a pandemic. I explained things that were in place prior to the November 13th condition. Hardly any of that is mentioned in current policy. If the accusation is we're doing something illegal, then we need to leave that up to the attorneys where it's at. I'm not going to make any further comment on it. I'm done. Thank you.
I would like to make one more comment that we are not closing the school. This isn't closing. Our hours are being counted. And so that's why if you were to ask me, what is one of your ideas that we could do at this point in time to make sure policy is being enforced? I have A, B, C, D, but one of them was, let's go ahead and let's shut down the school. Let's shut it down. And then, and then we'll make up the days during spring break, during the summer, because I think that would be more beneficial for our students to make them up in person instead of virtually right now.
Amber, do you have any comments?
I make a motion to add to the current COVID policy, to add the statement to when we are in red on the COVID alert map. IEP students will get to attend in person Monday through Friday, not to exceed 15%. I put 13 to 15%. That way we can make sure we at least have a chunk of them, a good, 13 to 15%. And that way those special needs students, they could still get that. I think that's incredibly important, which is recommended by the State Department of Education. So I don't know the wording or how this works, but I would like to add that.
Not with having more information.
I can't second that. I agree.
So no one went. Okay, it's not going to be
I will
seconded.
make a motion to provide district code policy as recommended by legal counsel. To provide further clarification, the superintendent as chief executive officer of the school district has the power to change learning to virtual from in-person or any combination thereof as required by the COVID pandemic.
I'll second that.
How do you vote, Ms. Warden?
Yes.
How do you vote, Ms. Caldwell?
Yes.
How do you vote, Ms. Baker?
No.
Didn't hear who.
All right, I will,
Oh, you're muted.
hear me say yes.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Did she call for Baker's vote?
Yes, she voted no.
Okay.
All right, I will make the motion to adjourn at 7:45 p.m.
I second.
How do you vote, Ms. Warden?
I guess we're not going to discuss enforcing policy, that we're done with all that until next month.
Yes, the meeting is adjourned.
How do you vote, Ms. Warden? How do you vote, Ms. Caldwell?
Yes.
How do you vote,
Is the
Ms.
meeting
Baker?
adjourned?
That's what we're voting for.
But it's not adjourned yet.
I made the motion, she seconded, and there was 2 yes votes to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, then I'm going to vote no to adjourn the meeting because we did not finish discussing enforcing policy.
So, yeah.